You Now show. Brought to you by the Club of Amsterdam.
So good morning. Thank you, Felix, for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion and conversation around how to reinvent marketing and what's the future actually of this new marketing happening now. Really, during the months of the lockdown and self-isolation, we've been in fact writing a new future. This acceleration of what has happened, especially in the world of digital, has really impacted tremendously marketeers. And I think there is no topic right now that has moved to such a level than the role of marketing today. And I think there are some lots of implications for marketers trying to build lasting relationship with customers. So in fact, what's happening is that the world has really been accelerating and has given actually the role that marketers had in the past a new future. There is the future that really says that in-depth monitoring of data and trends in consumer behavior is always there. So yes, this part of the past will be going towards us in the future. However, given the unprecedented nature of the pandemic and the profound changes it is causing, we also should not forget that harnessing imagination will be just as critical as doing what we were doing in the past. So I would say there are two buzzwords towards, building a future for marketing is really about tech and creativity. Two words which will help us rewrite how to really handle the new customer relationship. So we will need to think hard. We will need to think differently about what consumers expect in this next normal. It has to be, well thought. It has to integrate feeling, words, but also a lot of doing. We are entering into the new world of understanding, the test and learn philosophy at high pace. So to contextualize a little bit these ideas, I'd just like to start by talking about some trends. First, it is very clear that the digital trends is magnified for Gen Z, the millennials, and higher income consumers in general. We have seen that social commerce is on the rise as well. So indeed, this is not to be forgotten. And all the businesses that we see are those who are engaged in digital, those who have understood how to really disrupt their own industries by leveraging the digital tools are really now ahead of the curve. And this will only accelerate. The second trend, which I think, is worth mentioning to set up, the conversation on the customer marketing of the future is that marketers will need to rethink their media mix across a larger set of channels. We are seeing this, new ways to start marketing, such as video conferencing platform, virtual reality, and for the right segment, video game. There are going to be a lot of new ways to attract the consumers and to also rethink how to use your dollars you're going to spend in the media. The key issue for marketers in navigating this, what we called home body economy, is in integrating it to the proliferation services and product anchored in the home. So all companies, leveraging platforms in the home will be a next possible way for media to be bought. The third trend, which also help us identify, where we're going to host marketing in the future, is to manage this hyper-local activity and engagement, which will require marketers to rewire their operating model in order to provide a more granular presence at scale. So it is again this approach where we will need to build on many, ways, the capabilities to really understand personalization. And I will mention some examples a bit later in the talk. It's about analytics, it's about trigger-based messaging, it's about agile test and learn, but it is also requiring to really renew the thinking on how to scale content, supply chains, and manage performance while still being hyper-local. So a new way to really integrate, at the scale with the real personalization. So, all in all, it's about rethinking how we can connect to the consumers in a different way that will adapt to the tech and the creativity that is needed to be successful. And if I pause for a second, what is actually underlying behind these new ways of marketing is this idea of trust, this idea of how do we redefine trust in this future? How scaling intimacy and opportunities of genuine interaction online can help redefine trust. And I'd like to, quote Edith Weiner, which I admire as a futurist. And she was mentioning a very big trend around, redefining trust, saying that if we want to define luxury today as the basic economic terms in terms of, high demand and short supply, then trust is becoming the next luxury. And indeed, in that world dominated in the future by platform, AI, NLP language that's going to code all these new words being created, it is important to understand that it is a real luxury for organization and individual to be able to, base themselves on trust. So one of the important move that I see coming in the future now is this race to scale customer intimacy. Within a decade, if we looked at the example of Domino's Pizza, they transformed themselves from a struggling brand with all-time low stock prices into a thriving economy. In a time of extreme panic, Domino has remained there to their customers when they needed the most. And actually, thanks to the car side pickup, the chain, thrived throughout the pandemic. I can remember all these pictures that we saw from the TV when they were showing themselves, making themselves relevant to their customer, even when physical contact was not possible. Domino enjoyed, delivering pizza for free to hospital, being there, as a food company, to really support the economy. They made themselves relevant and they scaled themselves a position of being important to their customers, being intimate with their customer. So they have understood the customer insight, understood the customer needs, that it was important to be able to connect to the customer, but also be relevant at the moment where the physical contact was impossible. And they found ways to the greatest social strategy in our time, which I would say is about designing a new future for marketing, which is the customer intimacy. So, how do you stay in touch with your stakeholder without facing daunting advertising costs? That's one of the questions I think we will ask ourselves in the future. How do you maintain trust between your brand and your customer online? The answers may lie in inline communities, indeed. But it is important that, those shared values that we build our trust along, belong to the same communities and we trust each other more, in the community. So how do you make that trust scale? And scaling intimacy is about understanding, how those communities, how these small relationship between people will be, how do you make that become a key sustainable long-term strategy for your marketing in a company? So I'd like to have, couple of topics which I will, explain to really show in what way, this marketing for the future is happening. Leveraging data is, of course, what we hear everywhere, but it is a reality. It is a future now. Leveraging data to create meaningful connection is how do you really understand your target audience? How do you make sure that your target audience that you really well define will be, actually understanding the message? And the secret lies in understanding your customer. But by leveraging the analytics of online behavior, you can today understand which content works for you and how you can adapt and improve your strategy accordingly. And we're only at the start of understanding this. So get yourself in your team data analytics, get yourself, the competence you need to understand which platform your customer prefer, what do they talk about, what do they like, be relevant to the customer message. This is only the start of better understanding the people you want to reach. For years, we've been packaging them into buckets with shared, demographics, with shared value. And now what is really important is that you don't need to bucket them, you can approach them, and that understand what resonates with each one of them. So thanks to the data, you can really gonna go in the future to a way more personalized content, personalized way to create trust, personalized way to really make sure that you understand what the needs are of your customer. So it can be used in two ways, to tell your assumptions and to discover new ones. So don't underestimate the power of data to help you accelerate, to understand how to build competitive difference and in talking to your customers and engaging with them. So online communication, for example, many variables can influence content engagement and can make the difference between resonating for your audience or not. And for instance, if we look at the new, content topic recognition, and we understand, how you can better understand how to really format your communication, the words in a way that you're going to express to, match to your audience, the language, actually you will make a difference in the future, because that language is what's important, especially for Generation Z, that you match what they expect. It might be a crude example, but it illustrates the decision you have to take when determining your content strategy to better start understanding all the variables around your audience, the formal language, what it is about, the codes, decode, the semiology behind it. So all this science that we have used sporadically will now become top of mind for marketeers that want to understand how to better express their message. So what's the practice of data-driven intimacy? Data can help you build unique relationship, but it can also be done in a very complex and very straightforward way. To take another pizza example, what about Domino's example on how they have survived by simply listening to their customers? By combining traditional in-person focus group with comments by customer online, they have realized they had to pivot and change their recipe. They wanted really to really understand the customer better, but had opened an open line with them, and they have actually redesigned their franchise success. It resulted in a unique turnaround for the company's success, which was based on understanding really the consumer in a new way, but they reached that in the digital way. And this benefit of ultimate personalization is that actually you can really, for the first time, understand at personal level what customer want. So it's important to understand that you can't scale intimacy with a data-driven approach with the snap of a finger. As you know, every 6 seconds, a new website is launched. There is more content online than anyone could consume in a lifetime. How do you keep yourself visible in that world? And, if you want to step forward and be relevant with your offer in the future, it is about understand the prioritization and finding the valuable people and communities which will you want interact. So not only you need to be data, but you need to have, the capabilities to understand how to prioritize. And that's a competence which you didn't have to have in the past, where you could only bucket. So there is a big trend where we only seeing the start of it, called account-based marketing. It's the characteristic of the idea that less is more. This approach is enabling you to direct your sales and marketing efforts more directly on a set of highly valuable and highly promising leads as separate market. So this idea of compartmentalizing through personalized content and campaign just tailor made to the specific account. So it's all about recognizing that your account has its own, ways of expecting content to be there. And it will be easier for to become intimate with them if you deploy the right content, and lead logically for any marketers for to get a higher advertising rate of return. And actually also to really be able, through a lot of content creation tools, which is where you can leverage your creativity to become top of mind. So we talk a lot about video marketing, influencer marketing, but behind that is really about understanding in this account-based marketing, how you can make a relevant trust relationship with your account. So as you see, it's getting really much more narrow, much more real, much more authentic, much more trustworthy, and leveraging all the tools that you have to still stay on what it calls, which is to build a great relationship. And I'd like to start on a different note about talking about the future of employee advocacy. Because while you are starting to build this intimacy with your customer, the big trend which is happening is also the art of leveraging your employees. Because as you know, people trust other people more than brands. And the one who are the closest to your brand are your employees. So in fact, if we look at it, participants think that in any test that we have run, that the employees are a very credible sources when sharing information about the brand. And people think that the CEO, when they have messages, that are relevant to the company, are really inspiring. And it is mandatory now for companies to get some voices in the company to start becoming advocate for their messages. So we're only at the start of employee advocacy. However, employee advocacy in the future will be about leveraging the right content that every employee wants to dispatch to their own audience and network. And that is, in fact, building trustworthy relationship between each employees and their own network. And this effect is right now at the start of leveraging an amazing plant of creative content that you can use and leverage through the employees. They are the heart and soul of the company. And more, we are seeing that realizing and empowering employees to talk about the brand online is a huge asset. If we take Starbucks, for example, they heavily encourage employees to share content and experience about the brand. And actually, with its Starbucks partners social media page, the company features stories of employees all over the world. So this is creating a parallel stream to the classic go-to-market that we have seen. And we're only at the start of that, because this is what I call, engaging in those minor, mini communities. And if we go back to Starbucks, this example shows that you can only let your employee, talk about the brand. It humanizes it, but it's also show that sense of community. And if you are reaching your customers and your partners and the stakeholders that matters to you, then you create an enormous opportunity for you to do it from within, which is why any employee would like to go and work for a company which their employees are happy, which their experience is important and shared. So it is going to be an amazing source of recruitment as well, to share that everybody will want to work for companies that have great actually content, which are emerging from their own sales, from their own organizations. So this is going to be, leveraged in the future seriously. It's about converting advocacy to intimacy, where the nuts is. And content segmentation and distribution is one of these important move in to consider moving from advocate to intimacy. Not all brand content is relevant for everyone, and if you share content to your employees internally, make sure you understand equally how to segment your topic. In this way, your employees can engage on topics that are genuinely interested in. So yourself don't get a newsletter to the whole company. In the future, recognize the communities you have within your company. Make sure that you treat them properly and communicate to these communities really separately, but with a lot of respect and trust. It's important to train and trust the employees, and we will see more of that happening in the future, because one size fits all is not the right opportunity coming further to us. And measuring success, understanding, having the data to support in what way you will be able to reach out and get that tremendous content out there, is going to be only data driven. So listen to your data, be creative by creating content, but make sure your data is there to help you be even more creative. In essence, your employees are the most straightforward path towards building a more human connection between your stakeholders and your brand. And don't forget that we are all, as human, political animals. We are all there in the social, conversation. So it's really important in this world of tech never to forget that the brand is more than just a name and a logo. It is a community of real people, and it is a community which should include not only your customer but your employees. I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of embracing and opening new doors. Today, if you want to open new doors, which is the way to reach out to a bigger audience, to understand which community you're going to reach to, it's about actually finding the different channel where you will find your customers. And in fact, the customer trust in brands increases when customer sees message repeated across channels. So leverage and embark in those new channels where you see your consumers, and be the first, because this is all about engaging in all these new platforms that are creating interesting ways into the new customer 360 daily routine, that you will make yourself relevant. And since trust as a whole is in decline, the consistent look for omni-channel presence will have an enormous merit, and you will gain a lot of value by pioneering these new ways to reach to your customer. So why scale intimacy? There's a great opportunity to revolutionize visibility, reach, and trust. Social media that is based on community and intimacy between brand and consumer communities, they generate a high degree of trust. And it is exactly why those marketing strategies need to recognize the power of the omni-channel, which is debated as a big must do. But if you look at it, the power of the omni-channel is really about leapfrogging all these ways to your customer, and understand really how you can have a level of connectedness and intimacy with your customer, so you can play back and redefine what is the right omni-channel for every community. I would like to conclude by saying that all these new technologies in the future that are coming to us can be looked quite positively, because they are going to help us redefine the world of trust. They are going to help us redefine how to finally, make that dream come true, which is for a brand to connect with its consumer, which is for a brand to understand its customer. So it's a marvelous ride ahead of us. It's a positive ride ahead of us, because if we look and we never forget that authenticity and trust needs to be there, and that we should put at equal level tech and creativity, we have a very nice way to reinvent marketing for the dream of all marketeers that has been for years, which is to finally get access to an intimate access to every customer that there is around them. So thank you, and I hope you can reach out to me for any further information if you need on scaling intimacy. I'll be very happy to share some tips of stuff we're doing at Connected Circle.